Welcome back to Munro Live. Today we're here with the second generation Rivian R1S, a 2025 model. Now, in the past, we have completely torn down a Rivian R1T. We have also reviewed the Rivian R1S before. What we have criticized, which it's kind of a strange criticism, is that we believe that Rivian way overspent on the R1T that we tore down. They spent more building that vehicle than they were charging you for. Specifically for the interiors, which is my field, we saw that they were giving an awful lot to the consumer, the customer, who may be you. So from a customer standpoint, I was happy with the R1T. I was getting a lot for my money. From a manufacturing consulting standpoint, I'm telling Rivian, wait. You have overspent. You have given away too much. There are things that you could have done very, very small to save a significant portion of money. We're going to try and point out some of those things today. So the R1S, of course, is an SUV. It is a 3-row vehicle. Now, I've talked to a lot of people in regards to electric vehicles, and many who are of the soccer mom types were complaining that they could not get a 3-row vehicle in an electric vehicle. That was one of the things that were holding them back. They wanted to have the extra space for picking up their children's friends or having grandma and grandpa in the back seat while they have the kids in the back. And I completely understand that. And this is Rivian's offering that solves that problem. Now, we reviewed the R1T, and this shares a lot with the R1T. Some of these components are direct replacements. Some of them have changed a little bit. We're going to try and point out a few. But in reviewing the R1T, we made mention of the fact that we have a wrapped top roll. This is a wrapped insert, but you see how it's being layered. It's literally sitting on top of the other. For high-end vehicles, I like layering. The reason why I like layering is because if you try to make a butt joint where two pieces are just coming right together, edge to edge, if there's any type of a tolerance, any type of an issue with alignment, that's going to be noticeable. This has a decorative seam that just ends in the middle of the part. I'm not trying to make any alignment to another component that is continuing on. Because these two pieces slip over top of each other, if it is not in the perfect position, it doesn't matter. You don't see an error as a consumer. So that solves a problem on your manufacturing line that is common with a lot of high-end vehicles, which for this interior I would consider high-end. That is a solution that I like. Now, some of these things I did not like in the past. We'll kind of look at those a little bit more. So we have those wrapped components. We have a real wood inlay that is being backlit. So this part is actually kind of floating over top of that wood inlay, creating a gap to get you that type of a reveal. Continuing down, still a wrapped component. I was calling out some problems that I had with this type of an approach. Whenever you have a seam like this curve and this curve are fixed positions. If I have a straight line, then if I'm off that direction or this direction, it's fine. The material will kind of stretch and pull. But if I have a sewn curve, I cannot over pull it that way and I cannot leave it back. It has to be in a perfect position. So this would be a locked position, and then I would pull all of my access out to the ends. That's a real big problem when you're up here because I have a curve which is locked position. I have this side seam which is a locked position. Curve, curve, curve. So this is a very, very critical part. In manufacturing, you risk delamination if this area is too tight, it popping back off. Because when you're trying to press it into an inside curve, that's under a lot of tension. Now I'm going to apologize if I'm jumping back and forth between this interior and some previous physical parts, but I really want you to see some of the issues that we had pointed out in the past. Now, one of the issues is that wood grain. There is a decorative wood trim, real wood, that is on both sides of the steering wheel, continues all the way across the vehicle. One of the issues that I pointed out in the wood grain, you see how the grain is mostly straight here along the bottom? But yet look at the top, see how it angles down? That's because this was one piece of material that had to be cut, splayed out. And because it's being bent onto this inside curve, the grain line gets twisted in. So this is inconsistent with the grain there. Being a real natural material, that's probably not a problem. Sometimes, however, when you're dealing with a quality manager within a plant and they see any type of inconsistency like that, they're going to want to reject the part and say, oh, no, this is an error. We can't have this. Everything must be straight in our vehicle. This curve and that bent grain does not match the other side. Because they have a split in the corner, they don't have that same issue. Now, because of this upper shape, there is a split in the veneer right here. They actually had to cut the veneer and kind of piece it back together. Let's go and look at what that looks like on a loose part. So this is a wood grain component from the Rivian R1T. This is that issue that I'm pointing out. Because of this outside curve, whenever you have an outside curve, you have too much material. Think about putting a tablecloth onto a table or trying to wrap a Christmas present. Those corners have a bulk of excess material that has to be cut out. This line right here is from them cutting out that wood veneer and then splicing it back together. But if you get real close in and look, you can see that it is inconsistent. It actually almost looks like it's chipped on the very corner. This is right along the side of the steering wheel. This is right in the face of the driver. This is a high-end material. It's very nice to say, I have a high-end material in my vehicle. But you have to have a design that enables the use of that high-end material. Are you willing, as a designer and a quality manager, to accept this type of condition, which is going to be natural with this material in your vehicle? If you're willing to accept it and you're willing to accept it as a customer, that's perfectly fine. However, if you say, no, we can never have that, well, then you either have to change the material or you have to change your design to prevent those types of situations. There are a lot of plastic components on these seats. There's a lot of trim covering. There's a lot of structure being covered. So if you look in the total, there were many components. This is what's called an outboard side shield. This is the track cover. The track cover, this insert is a separate piece that is snapped in. You'll see it has a different grain pattern from the rest. But how is this different from the R1T? The R1T, all of these parts were painted. We went through and we tried adding up in the vehicle all of the little plastic trim covering components. And I think in total we only found 5 that were not painted. And those 5 were grained so that they were very similar to the painted components in their overall look. So we're really criticizing how much was Rivian paying to paint these trim components that most likely did not need to be painted. And we think that it was a lot. Now looking here in this next generation R1S, they have removed the paint from a lot of those components. I'm looking at the cost, however. The original R1T, I do believe we were saying was around $75,000. This R1S is also $75,000. So they've removed that processing step, which has saved Rivian money. So the question becomes to the user, whoever's going to buy this, does the absence of paint on your tracks cause you any heartache? Is that an issue? Doing things like this is what's really going to help Rivian into profitability. Painted R1T, not painted R1S. If you're considering that, depending on the part, it can cost 70 cents to $1 in paint for each component. Was that really worth it for them? So look at the breakup of this seat. You see how the headrest is kind of floating above? It's attached to a structure that reaches behind. We have a separation from this upper shoulder area and the lower seat back. That separation is made by this plastic trim. Now, the seat structure itself, the metal structure, is actually made by Hyundai. It's a very efficient structure, but they kind of shoehorned it into this design, and in doing that, they had to MIG weld on a bunch of wires and excess components. They had to put in more plastic structure to support this overall shape. In doing that, I do believe that it adds into the cost. Rather than design a structure that's unique for this vehicle, and this vehicle is now the R1T, the R1S, and now the redesign of the R1S. I personally have not torn this apart to see if they've changed any of the structure inside. They may have. Even the cover stock. So this is an artificial material, and I cannot say for certain, but I suspect that they have changed the material between the R1T and this redesigned R1S. If you look at the way the material behaves, normally whenever I press into any type of a vinyl or leather material, if I see wrinkling on the surface, I normally assume that that is real leather. Now, I was tricked in the R1T looking at those wrinkles thinking maybe that is real leather, but of course it was not. It was an artificial material. When I press into those same areas here on the R1S, I do not get the same tactile feel, and I also don't get the same response with surface wrinkling. So I assume, and this is only an assumption, that they have actually changed the raw cover stock, which may have led to material and cost savings there. Now, there's one other big criticism that I have, and it's in this headrest, and it's in this decorative trim on the side of the headrest. There are 4 headrests in this vehicle that have that trim, and that trim is on both sides, which means that there are 8 of those components in this vehicle. Let's go and look at those components loose on a table. Now remember, this is for 8 decorative pieces on the headrests. We have the headrest structure, which is a chrome tube structure. That headrest structure has this overmold over top of it that creates a mounting base. This then has the foam that is installed or applied over top. Then you trim out the cover. Then this base is installed over the cover and over the foam. It is then screwed into place. This internal panel, which all of this is enabling, is this piece of adhesive fabric, is then snapped in place over top of that. This also provides the attachment for the outer cover. The decorative chrome bezel then snaps over top of that. So I have this molding and then 1, 2, 3 decorative pieces plus 2 screws in all 8 locations. What am I getting? I am getting a chrome trim that has a piece of yellow fabric. That is the only thing that the customer sees. All of the rest are components necessary to support that. So the question becomes, could that have been thought better? Could you have had a more efficient design to provide that type of a look without having all of this complexity in 8 locations? Now, without tearing this apart, it looks like they have still carried over all of these same components. But it would be interesting if I did get a chance to tear apart a new one to find out if they have achieved savings in this area. The overhead is an artificial suede material. Now, lots of times you'll see inexpensive woven materials that are basically compression formed into the overhead. This is a higher end version of that. I've looked at the grab handles. They are the same in my determination from the R1T that we took apart. They have the inner fabric. They have the outer vinyl area. No paint. I don't believe those are painted on the previous version either, though. Look at the seat backs. See how they're on 2 different levels? That's because this actually does have a multi-position seat back. Now, this can be common in a lot of 3-row vehicles. Not as common on 2-row vehicles, but we have seen it before. So the OEM has to decide, how much money do I want to throw at the comfort of the 2nd-row occupants? That is a comfort feature. Now, I've looked at the structures, the rear seat structure, lower structure, which this entire back, the support is done by the lower structure. There is no upper striker that is supporting this in crash loads. Because of that, all of the lower structure is very, very heavy. It is overbuilt. But this was this lower seat structure that I criticized the most for having very, very thick, looked like plate steel laser cut panels. But we saw in the Tesla Cybertruck that they are double the size of this vehicle's lower structure. So I cannot give Rivian tops for being the overbuilt anymore. Now that's going to be the Cybertruck. So I'm looking at this in new light, saying, all right, between the two, I think that this is more well thought out and probably done better. Look at the back of the headrest. You'll see that there's a USB port up there, a coat hook, and then a decorative exterior panel. When we looked at the R1T, That was more wood grain. So here is that same component from the R1T. You see the wood inlay or wood veneer over top of the injection molded panel. This is a cost that they have decided to remove from the R1S and the second generation. So here's the question to you if you're a customer or consumer. Does the absence of this wood inlay affect your opinion for purchasing that vehicle at the $75,000 range? I personally do not think the loss is a detriment. I think that this is very, very clean. I think that this is appropriate for the vehicle and appropriate for the price point. Now, it is still either, well, I don't believe it's painted. Most likely it's some sort of an in-mold film, but that would be less expensive than the wood veneer. The back panel is a wrapped back panel. This is the same, I do believe, from the R1T. I had a little joke and a comment on that one. So let's kind of look at that back panel a little bit. When we first looked at that back panel, before we actually tore the vehicle apart, there was some speculation of maybe this was an in-mold grain and it had some sort of a soft touch paint, just to give it that kind of a dull feel and light appearance. But we determined that no, that is actually a wrapping that is being glued to the panel. Interesting thing about this glue, you see how it has that very splotchy appearance? That's because this is a solvent-based adhesive. Solvent-based adhesives are hard to do in the US now. It's still allowed, but you have a big VOC issue. So this entire back panel was sprayed, the cover was applied to it. But this cover continues around to the edge of the backside, but you'll notice there is no overspray. That is because all of this edge was done by hand, and it was done with a paintbrush. Literally dipping the adhesive into a pot, brushing adhesive along the edges, and then wrapping this over. Now again, high VOC, solvent-based adhesives. Someone was getting high on the assembly line doing this for all of this edge fold. That is an inefficiency in the process. It happens a lot on low volumes. I've seen this done before on Ferrari and Maybach and some others. Having this type of a hand process is not as common in a mid-range vehicle, or whether you consider this mid-range or even high-end. So this is a 3-row vehicle. So the seats do fold down and they do slide forward in order to give access to the back. Now, you'd probably have to be fairly far forward with the second row seat in order for leg access to be in the third row. So this most likely would just be children. But now I have to turn myself into a liar. Until I folded down the seats, I did not realize that these headrests also have that decoration. So that goes from 8 per vehicle to 12 per vehicle. So if I were advising them, that is a feature I would highly suggest that they eliminate, especially on the third row. If they want to keep all of those components for the first 2 rows, fine. The third row is already being reduced. That is something that I would say is unnecessary for the design. Third row occupant comfort. We still have this wrapped arm panel insert. We still have a wrapped armrest, and that is even a storage bin with cup holders. For third row occupants, that is quite an impressive feature. Just having a wrapped movable armrest with storage is expensive in of itself. So I'm very impressed with how much they're really giving away to the customer for this vehicle. So lots of times with an SUV, you have a lift gate that just goes up and everything would be up above. All of this would be injection molded plastic and we wouldn't really care. It's above our head. If I have anything in the back here and I hit a bump or stop, take off too fast, it's just hitting on this plastic. But this also has this lower tailgate. This tailgate section has carpeted panels. That is unique and that is costly for this price point. So I'm impressed that they are offering this to the customer. Now the R1T, of course, we had tracks and we had tie downs within the R1T. We see these tie downs also here in the R1S. There's only one per side. These are adjustable across different positions on this aluminum extrusion. Aluminum extrusion actually has to be machined in order for this thing to lock out. You can kind of see these little divots through here. So after they extrude the aluminum, they actually have to come through and machine all of those pockets, which are providing the lock points for the tie down. So we have a load floor. All right, it's a carpeted load floor, has a pull handle. It is not hinged, it completely removes from the vehicle. Has just a scrim backing on the back. So of course the carpet just folds over the edge, has raw cuts. Okay. Then we have a storage bin. All right, that's fine. 3-component storage bin. But then I feel like I'm in a game show or infomercial. But wait, there's more. There's a large lower bin as well. So the question becomes, what are you storing down there? What are you storing here? Down there to me would be tow straps, tow chains, emergency supplies, flares, any of that stuff. This would be the stuff the kids need. Any type of loose, easy to grab materials, because again, that is just a compression mold panel. It's not going to take a lot of weight, but the stuff that you need quick access to where you don't have to dig really deep down in the bottom. Okay, so this is an SUV, so I should have a lot of storage. So I would want to fold down these seats and get as much storage as I can. These buttons, however, are not to fold down those seats. These are actually for the second row. So if I need to get that second row seat out of my way, I can fold that down, and again, I'm a tall guy, I'm able to fold down the third row seat. So now I have the long storage access. So this is a little interesting. Here are my power outlets. Lots of times would be some sort of a flip-up door. Flip-up doors, you always have the risk of them breaking. If they flip down and you have a cord above, any weight hanging down is pushing down on the door. If you flip up, you have to have it spring-loaded in order for it to stay out of the way while you have something plugged in. Otherwise, it's just going to completely fall on you. This slider gets rid of the spring, so it's more efficient there. It doesn't really lock in place, so it's very, very loose, but it's still protecting the electrical. So I think that I like this type of design more than a hinge with a pin with a spring on a flip-up door. So we have struts on the tailgate. This is a powered tailgate or lift gate moving up out of the way. Lots of times you'll have a button that you have to push in order to close it down. There are some vehicles, my vehicle, where if I try and fight the power lift gate, I get a lot of back pressure. I basically have to use the powered motor in order to close it. Otherwise it's uncomfortable. This one actually feels very, very light. I'm able to move it quite easily just with my hand, but it is still a power close function. So in the end, for me, being an interiors person, understanding the manufacturing methods that go into all of those components, considering the cost of $75,000, considering how much is being offered to the customer at $75,000, I am still very impressed with the Rivian R1S. I'm still impressed with Rivian in general. Now, I still think that they are probably overpaying, but if they have determined to be profitable at this price point with this interior, when we've seen a few things that they have reduced from their earlier design, I'm excited for them. And I can see a lot more opportunity going forward for them to change some things to get a little bit more efficiency out of their design. So if I had the need for a truck or an SUV, knowing that how much am I going to pay for a regular gas-powered truck and SUV, at $75,000, I'm getting quite a lot of creature comfort plus an electric vehicle. I wouldn't be upset at all to purchase a Rivian. I'm not going to do it yet, but I wouldn't be upset about it. So thank you very much for watching Munro Live. Have a good day.